Stoli Vodka is one of the world's most awarded premium vodkas. With a commitment to uncompromising quality since 1938, Stoli controls every aspect of its vodka making, from planting, harvesting the finest ingredients, to distilling and bottling. This process has been followed for decades to guarantee the consistency and quality and signature ultra-smooth taste in each iconic bottle produced. Isn't it time you picked up Stoli Vodka for a try? For those who know their vodka well, and themselves even better, Stoli, the vodka. Check out Stoli as the official vodka in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Enjoy responsibly. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Stoli Group USA, LLC, New York, New York.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Today, it's a little different. I mean, it's...
You're not Wingo.
Who
are you?
I'm the much... No, I'm not even... I was going to go with better looking.
You're almost as old.
Wow, that's this. We're not even a minute. So if your over-under was old jokes from Golic Jr. On a minute and a half, this is fair. The man that has... What am I, a sneaky vampire?
Sneaky vampire, yes. Yeah. Jason Fitz, former fiddle player and sneaky vampire.
Yeah, that's it.
That's fantastic. Trey gets to go on a little jaunt, gets to go on a little vacation. So I think we should rename the show Fitz in the Two Towers of Golic. I think that's
Fitz in the Two Towers of Golic.
Yeah, you guys.
Did you put some thought into that?
Yeah, well, maybe a little bit. Yeah,
is that because Fitz in the Tantrums is already a band?
It is, and I don't get any royalties from that.
I put his name first on that.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, well. Listen, you see, he named it like a band. Like it's not just Fitz in the Golics the way that a sports talk radio person would name it. No. It's Fitz in the Towers. There's got to be some other descriptive word in there that only someone with the band experience that Jason has would toss in.
Is this what the rest of the week is going to be like?
You're in for a lot of it. Now you flopped from the 6 o'clock to at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. You've done the 12-hour flip, right? Yeah. From Spain and Fitz, you do in the evening to now 6 in the morning with Mike and I. So we appreciate you making that turn for us.
Well, it's worth it. You two are absolutely worth the lack of sleep.
Whatever. You're lying there. And because we're going to get into how we did the Twitter live thing at our house for the Super Bowl, the first half and halftime, and how Jason Fitz absolutely ruined the Justin Timberlake halftime show for us.
You're welcome,
absolutely
America.
Ruined it for us. As Mike said, the fiddler with the band Perry. So you know that business, and you peeled back the onion, the layers of the onion a little bit there.
I did, by the way, just hear Mike say that if I don't bust out a fiddle, he's going to take the rest of the week off. Do you guys think that I just carry one around, like I just store it under my armpit?
Yes, more or less. Yeah, okay. We just kind of figure how that's kind of what life is for you at this point. Now that you're not doing it professionally, you need some sort of outlet, so it's always just there for you to fiddle on. If you ever find yourself on a roof, per se.
If I creepily just start pulling a fiddle out for the rest of we're good with that. That's
it will be completely expected, and you'll play, right, Forrest? You'll do that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I just what I asked you when you were over for the Super Bowl, I said, is a fiddle player have to know The Devil Went Down to Georgia like a guitar player has to know Stairway to Heaven?
Yes.
Is that kind of, yes. You have to know that?
Yeah, and I'm not very good with lyrics to anything, so I don't really know, like, whenever you sit in with the band, they're like, ooh, let's do Devil Went Down to Georgia. Then they look at me and they're like, all right, sing it. I'm not the best with the whole lyric thing.
I know the words.
Well, good. Okay.
You play it, I'll sing it.
No, this is going to be a viral sensation.
See, and my question with all this is because this has got to be the expectation every time you've hopped on a mic since you started into sports talk radio. And this is actually weird and kind of an identity question that because you were an NFL player for 9 years before you got into this, but 18 years later now, we've had instances where, people that have shadowed on this show didn't even know that you played football.
Didn't know
they just knew you in this vein. So I wonder how long it's going to take for you, Fitzy, before the expectation every time you come in the studio is where's the fiddle?
I think the music community took about 3 minutes to forget about me, but ESPN will take far, far longer.
By the way, that guy that didn't know I played football, he lasted one day here. He's gone.
That's fair.
Yeah, we don't talk about him no more.
Now that we've given you all the fiddle takes you could ever want for the beginning of a show, let's get to some actual sports. It's time for Off the Top.
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. I dance during Off the Top.
Oh, my
that's
gosh,
what I do.
You really did your chair dance.
The magic of radio.
You're welcome. The Cavaliers led the Magic by as many as 21 points, but they collapse in the second half, and they actually fall 116-98. Epic failure for Cleveland.
I don't even know where to go. I think I'm one of the last ones trying to hang on, being from Cleveland and, knowing what Cleveland fans went through all the years of me growing up, but finally getting the championship with LeBron and getting the Indians being so close, being in the World Series, and the normal January swoon for the Cavaliers. But, boy, this one really is starting to feel different here. Outscored 65-31 in the second half. Only scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. Ty Lue ends up in the locker room in the second half because he's sick. Maybe he's sick of what he's seeing on the court, even though the first half looked good for the Cavaliers in this one. It is just spiraling down the toilet.
Yeah, a lot of people thought Ty Lue was just getting taken out to pasture at halftime, and they were finally moving on there. But for the Cavs, they just are reinventing ways to be bad. LeBron James, no points or assists in the second half. Isaiah Thomas, no points in the second.
That was right. He had no rebounds and assists. There was a typo there. No rebounds. I fell for the same thing, but we figured we'd let you fall.
Thanks a lot, Stats and Info.
No
I just sounded like an idiot for 2 hours.
Yeah, you did.
Brett.
That's no problem. Yeah.
What we do.
Oh, man.
That was my Isaiah Thomas impersonation, by the way. Throw everyone else under the bus after the game
How
in a public
about it?
setting.
He is doing a whole lot of talking, isn't he?
So here's the difference between Cleveland this year and years past. In years past, they haven't necessarily looked great, but we expect them to turn the switch. This year, they flat out look bad. That's a difference between what we saw last year before. We're used to LeBron can just always make things magical happen. When you've looked as bad as the Cavs have looked so often, I don't think you can just suddenly remember how to finish a game or remember how to actually play defense. And the amount of points that they're giving up night in and night out is disgusting.
It's ridiculous. They got Minnesota up next. I mean, and how much of this, a lot of people put a lot of it on effort. And if that's the case, then they should just all be so flat out embarrassed if we're not talking about X's O's as much as we're talking about actual effort on the court. Then, as I say all the time, you got to look long and hard in the mirror, but it doesn't seem like that matters to these guys.
I understand that in especially professional sports, not everyone's going to like each other, not everyone's going to be friends, but I am amazed in the NBA with how much smaller the locker rooms are comparatively, how reckless guys are in the way they talk. We've seen it with John Wall, who's currently injured, and what he said on SportsCenter the other night with Michael Smith talking about his team in his absence, and this continued Isaiah Thomas just being the go-to quote guy for Cleveland in all of this. It seems like this team genuinely, in a lot of instances, doesn't like each other in ways that manifest on the court. Like, they don't like playing basketball together.
You just wait till you leave. Don't keep the radio on. You have no idea what we're going to say about you the minute you're gone.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah,
that's fine. Once I'm gone, I don't tune into the show anyway. So.
Oh. Wow, that was awful. Speaking of awful.
Off the top.
The Thunder defeated the Warriors 125-105. An awful night for Golden State.
Warriors fell to 1-4 against the Rockets and Thunder this season. And by the way, the Rockets just one game behind Golden State in the West right now. This is the first time the Warriors never led in a game at home since Steve Kerr became the head coach in 2014. It's also the first time the Warriors never led in a game this season. There's only two teams left that have not suffered a wire-to-wire loss. That would be the Celtics and the 76ers. Warriors had 25 turnovers in this one. Draymond Green has his league-high 13th technical. So this is, for just handing them basically the title, and still they're going to be the heavy favorite going in and losing here to the Thunder. But I think most people really kind of look at the Rockets. Is that going to be the team that has the best shot to dethrone them, even though the Thunder just put it on them right now?
Yeah, it's the top-end performance, 5-2 against the top 5 teams in the league this year are the Thunder, and them and the Rockets are giving people hope. I think they needed, considering the usual teams that challenge Golden State are down this year. Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs are really out of the picture. The Cavaliers we just talked about are in disarray, and so the teams that made the moves this offseason are seeing the return on their investment, which I think is good. In an NBA where we wondered, would this offseason shuffling do anything other than entertain us in that moment? The answer up until now has been yes. Our line is always, well, let's see it in the playoffs when you've got to beat them 4 times out of 7. But at least right now you can say if you're a team going forward that's thinking about making big wholesale changes in the interest of beating Golden State, right now it looks like that's at least a working theory that's coming true.
Now, I'm not willing to jump off the Golden State bandwagon the way I am Cleveland. I do think that there's a switch, obviously.
A little bit of a difference.
Right. This is the one where we say, okay, they're going to figure that out before the finals come. But the interesting thing is that we're really looking at a Western Conference final that's going to be far more compelling than the actual NBA finals this year because the Western Conference is flat out stacked. It's just going to be a better watch.
They are, though you wonder the Celtics have given the Warriors a game, but you're sitting there with the Celtics and the Raptors with 16 losses and the Warriors and the Rockets with 13 losses. So I think I'm with you. If it ends up being the Warriors and Rockets playing for the right to get to the NBA Finals, I think that probably would turn out to be a better series than what we think the finals could be.
That Toronto team might finally be able to take a step forward. DeRozan and Lowry have been playing really well, albeit a little bit of a setback. I think they lost to the Sixers last night. But a team that's really deep, that's got 2 quality guys, that seems to be the medicine. You've got to have a way to be dynamic when your best lineup is off the court for a bit.
Speaking of the best,
Off the top.
it was a tough night for the best player for the Knicks. Kristaps Porzingis, the NBA's leader in blocks, tore the ACL in his left knee after landing awkwardly on Giannis Antetokounmpo's foot after a dunk in the second quarter of a loss to Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's a tough call there for Knicks fans. And you want to do a quick correction on that? Raptors won last night?
Yeah, no, the Raptors beat the Celtics by like 20 last night. I don't know what game. I was watching the Sixers before. They beat somebody.
Didn't really understand what jersey you were looking at.
There's a lot of NBA action last night. I was hooking it all to my veins.
Unfortunately for the Knicks, though, that as Jason mentioned, after a dunk coming down on Antetokounmpo's foot, tearing his ACL. They said there was some hope after the game because they saw him walking around a bit, but we've seen that. I know you have. I know I have, Mike, time and time again, a teammate or another player walking around after hurting a knee and thinking, okay, maybe it's not that bad. And with the ACL tear and you're done for the year. I mean, what does this do for a team? They were sitting in the 11th slot, 5 games out of the playoffs right now, but you have Porzingis, and that's who you're going to build around for the future, this young 7'3" superstar in the league. And now you got to be going, for a big man with a lower body injury, you never know how that goes down the road.
We just ran through this list of concerns with DeMarcus Cousins when he went down with the Achilles injury. For a guy that size, the historical comps coming back from that didn't work in his favor. And we know, looking back at other big stature-wise, I mean, Greg Oden was the case at the top of most people's lists for things like this. And now for the Knicks, you've got nowhere to go but down, right? You have to try and basically get out of this season with the best possible draft status possible, because winning at this point, we've talked about this in the past with the Knicks plenty of time, does you absolutely no good from here on out.
It's also going to affect the Knicks going into next year because Porzingis, when he comes back, whatever level of him that they get, they won't get him back until some way through next season. So it's not just a 1 year, it's a 2-year correction required in New York.
Off the top.
This is a special day for college football. It's National Signing Day. Georgia enters with the number 1 class in ESPN's recruiting rankings.
The biggest difference is nearly 3/4 of the big signings are done because they have the early signing period in December. So most of those players are already signed, though you still had, going into the week, 46 guys at the top that were still uncommitted. So we'll see where they end up, probably in Alabama. But quite honestly, though, a lot of the teams don't have a lot of room left. When 3/4 of the class is basically signed, there's not a ton of room left. But as you mentioned, Georgia, they have the top player who's the quarterback, and the quarterback is still going there after just what happened with Georgia, and the quarterback that came in, and Fromm was a true freshman, comes in for Eason, who's transferring to Washington. So Fromm's the quarterback, and the top quarterback in the country comes to Georgia. So, man, they're stacked there and looking good right now. Alabama sitting at number 4 right now, entering National Signing Day. They signed the top 3 class every year between 2008 and 2017. Not a shock at all, but a big day. I remember when you had yours, you did your signing on the show with Mike and Mike, and Jake did the same thing. But a big day for you guys to finally make it official when you're going to go to your college.
It was. There was a wonder how this early signing period would affect things, and to your point, the make it take it league that the NCAA is for college football. But for this day now, I think what it'll morph into, because you're right, it used to be just that moment for everyone involved, and now that you split that up, what today really becomes, and what you read about the number of top players that waited till today, is this really will be that last-ditch period where coaches and staffs are trying to court some of the top players, those guys that traditionally have taken longer to make those decisions, sometimes after signing day for guys in years past, are really going to be the focus of now, is the bulk of your class is going to be put together in that first signing period for guys who would have been 3 stars like me, who want to make sure, all right, my commitment is sealed so that there's no funny business as they chase those 4 and 5 star guys late in the process.
And are we still faxing? Is that what we're still doing? It's not. We're not faxing anymore. Okay.
I talked to Jeff Collins, the Temple coach, when we were doing their bowl game. It was right around the initial signing period, and we asked them, the fax machine is officially out, I don't know who's still using them.
But it's been around. I mean, it didn't go away 10 years ago, right? It's been around, right? I mean, the faxing it in. I was always amazed at that.
Now you can download an app on your phone.
There's got to be
works as a fax.
Signing day app. Yeah. This is what we do. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So we'll end with the most confusing.
Off the top.
So the opening ceremonies aren't until Saturday, Friday, but the competition for the 23rd Olympic Winter Games starts today in Pyeongchang.
Yes, it does. Yeah, well, to fit everything in the time frame they need to start some of the competitions today. The first medal given out, I think, are going to be Saturday in Pyeongchang, but the as you mentioned, the opening ceremonies on Friday. Did I say it wrong? Did I say it wrong?
Pyeongchang. It's Pyeongchang.
Pyeongchang. I went the other way. I reversed it.
You went Wangchung. I don't fault you.
I'll just say Winter Olympics now and nothing more. But they have added 4 events. Do you guys see they added 4 events to this thing?
No.
4 new events. They are mixed doubles in curling.
Doubles?
Mixed doubles in curling. Men's and women's mass start. It's speed skating, a mass start in speed skating, team event alpine skiing, and men and women's big air in snowboarding. So 102 medal events in 15 sports. The U.S. team, by the way, is the largest athlete delegation for any nation in Winter Olympic history. So I love it. Can't wait to watch it all, from the biathlon to ski jumping to the luge to alpine to figure skating. I love it all. So I know you're into it as well, aren't you?
Has curling become the most talked about Winter Olympic sport now? Is it to the point where it was such a niche idea before, and now, especially coming off?
What bubble do you live under that curling would be bubble? What rock do you live under that curling would be more talked about than figure skating?
Well,
come on.
Curling has become very, very popular.
It's hot in the streets, man. And now, some of that is people lampooning the idea that curling is a sport, but talking to people who, during the trip to Minnesota for the Super Bowl, participated in some curling. Trey took part with some of the NFL Live guys in curling and said it is a difficult endeavor.
But it is Trey.
I've never. Well, that is true. He's not a mathlete or an athlete, but somewhere in the midst of all that. But I'm interested. What does doubles look like? Because you said mixed doubles is now added, but that means there was regular doubles before. That means there was sex specific doubles.
I'm with you.
What does that look like?
You.
Can we work on maybe fielding a curling team in a few years?
I think we should give it a go.
I think this is our shot.
You bring up figure skating. Listen, I love watching figure skating, but it always comes under fire for the judging. Because a lot of these other things are, you have a definitive outcome by time of going down a hill or a luge or whatever. But when you're looking for it's like the gymnastics in the Summer Olympics. You're basing it on judges. It can get a little iffy.
The best part about sitting in this chair is sometimes I get to have the last word. So I leave off the top with this hot take. The Winter Olympics are better than the Summer Olympics. That is off the top.
Wow.
You're welcome, America. Golic and Wingo, presented by 1-800-Flowers. This year, be the one who wins Valentine's with 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can get 18 pink and red enchanted roses for only $29.99. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. So we made it all the way through off the top.
Yes, we did.
And we didn't even say the word Patriots. We didn't say the word Colts, and we didn't say the word Josh McDaniels, which I think is a record. So now we can get to, obviously, the staggering news, as Josh McDaniels, according to Colts' official Twitter account, was going to have his press conference today to be announced as the new head coach for the Colts. And then all of a sudden last night, bam, no, he's gone. This is a move to me that absolutely pins the Colts against the wall in a bad way. And it's actually quite an inspiring move for the Patriots in a world where we thought there was going to be a ton of change. Now it looks like, hey, guess what? There's at least one piece that's going to stay here, and it makes it feel like continuity is accomplished in New England.
I mean, there's so many tangents to this. I don't even know where to start, you know, from why he turned it down to coaches that have already signed there to be on a staff that are going to stay there for the new coach, whoever that's going to be. But first and foremost, we have to try and figure out what was the reason. You know, and you got Schefter saying basically, he was on your show last night, was he not?
Yes.
Adam Schefter, and basically saying it wasn't about Andrew Luck's shoulder. It was just about his relationship to New England and his family in New England. Is that where he was going?
And I understand that. It looks like the immediate reporting from Schefter was that it was more about he just didn't feel comfortable and he was going back and forth. But do any of us really buy that? If you are 100% on board with Andrew Luck as his shoulder's healthy, this team, you've got a premier quarterback, do you really walk away from that job?
I mean, I don't know where to go with this, from Luck's shoulder to, is it he didn't want to move the family again? His wife, they have 4 kids. You know, he's in Denver and then St. Louis, and then been here in New England since 2012. He got a sweetened deal, but there's no way it's as much money as he would have got as a head coach. Is there a promise that when Bill retires, he's going to be the coach? I mean, there's a lot of things to look at with this.
There are a lot of things, and I struggle weighing between the two options of, is this more about, because the shoulder is the first thing I went to, that Josh McDaniels knows something that the rest of us don't about Andrew Luck's shoulder. Mort reported on Sunday there are doctors that think he may need another surgery on that shoulder. And so there's that side of it, and there's weighing, is that enough to disincentivize you from going to a place where if Andrew Luck is healthy, you've at least got the quarterback of your future planned out there for the time being, whereas now in New England, what's the advantage here? You come back with all that familiarity, but most people think the way they have for the majority of the season that Bill Belichick is not long for this world based on the strife and turmoil that we've seen. So has he been promised he's the coach in waiting? Right. Does that moment come sooner than later? Do we read more into the stuff going on with Tom Brady and Malcolm Butler as signs that Bill Belichick is slowly losing grip in a way that would be advantageous for Josh McDaniels to stick around? Because how good is that job when Bill and Tom are gone? Because that moment's coming sooner than later there. So all of these things I think are too closely intertwined to separate and say one weighs more than the other, but there are definitely enough tangents to go on to fill a 4-hour radio show.
The Colts don't care about any of that, do they?
Golic and Wingo, the podcast. Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
We've been having all sorts of straight talk this morning about the NFL drama, but the NBA will not be outdone in the drama category ever. And at this point, the Cavs are just broken. And we're getting used to them losing, but we're also getting used to constant chaos after every loss. We've reached a point. Isaiah Thomas comes out after the loss last night and has some sort of harsh words about the way the team is coming together. I almost feel like guys are trying to get traded at this point. Everybody wants off this ship because it is sinking at an alarming rate. The wheels have fallen off of the Cavs, and I don't see how they get put back on.
I'm amazed at what's going on here, and you alluded to it with Isaiah Thomas. This is what he had to say after the game.
As players, we gotta do better. I mean, when they start to go on their runs, which teams is gonna do each and every game, we gotta come together. And it's like right now, when we hit adversity, we go our separate ways, and that's just how I feel, and it looks like that as well. And guys start to go one-on-one offense, and then defense is every man for itself.
There are those that would say they like hearing the truth from Isaiah Thomas if that's what's happening, but there are others that are like, I heard you this morning. And as former players, you know, again, different sport, doesn't matter if you're a former player in a locker room, what you want to go out publicly and what you want to stay in the locker room.
Yeah, this just seems suspect for me, and people are going to say that someone needs to say it because the Cavs are clearly devoid of a lot of leadership right now, at least what we're seeing outwardly. But leadership to me isn't pointing the finger at everyone in the public setting after all these games. We heard them have what appeared to be a fruitless conversation behind closed doors where maybe this didn't come to fruition, so maybe it's a desperation heave. But even then, true leadership usually acknowledges its own place in these problems, where with Isaiah, it's constantly been, well, we were bad on defense before this. Yeah, I called Kevin Love out. All these different things that never really thumb point. It's all finger pointing.
Don't you have to read the room at some point, too, and sort of accept that you're the new guy in this situation that's not necessarily being received or playing at the level people wanted. So to come in and be like, hey, everybody's just falling apart, this whole thing is broken, that seems alarming to me when you're not the voice of that locker room yet. And frankly, you haven't earned the opportunity to be the voice of that locker room. That takes time.
It does take time. But, to your point earlier, about that's what I want to know, the thought process of the guys in that room. And we're not going to know that fully what's going on there. But for the fact for LeBron, in a game that they're winning at halftime, 67-51, and for the second half, LeBron to have no rebounds and no assists. No rebounds and no assists. First time since 2016. I find that somewhat amazing to have that fall apart like that, a turnaround of 39 points to be up 21 and lose by 18. And everybody sits there and points to it as a lot of it is effort. And Mike, you know this. I mean, that's the most damning thing to an athlete. The most damning thing if you look at that team or that person and you say, you know what? They're not trying. They're just not trying hard enough. They just don't look like they give a damn out there. That's about as bad as you can be talked about as an athlete, because that's the one thing, no matter what your skill level is, you can control your effort. And if you look like, and everybody's saying, and even the guys on the team are kind of leading you along to that is, I just can't fathom that thought process and that feeling like that.
Well, it's a team full of guys all doing that, too. It's not just one guy that's dragging it down. Right. It's everybody on that team. The Bad Body Language Award for the all-time going to the entire Cavaliers roster right now. And you just wonder where it ends. You wonder, we've heard so much of this pointed at LeBron, who said he's not waiving his no-trade clause, seems to be there for the long haul, but there seems to be some growing friction between LeBron and everybody else in all this that I don't know if it gets resolved. And I don't know if it's one of those things where anyone on either side is right.
Now that is some Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. There's not an easy solution for Cleveland. No. It's not about getting a guy. You can't fix whatever is wrong in that locker room.
Yeah, trade deadline's not going to do a thing for them at all. This is going to be about players stepping up and being accountable for what they're doing on the court.
And when it's this broken emotionally, I'm not sure it easily gets fixed.
Yep.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
We've got some Golic here, but there is no Wingo. Trey gets a few days off and gets to hang out, and they are letting me sit in the big boy chair. I'm Jason Fitz hanging out.
Can you tell people why that song was?
Yeah, so I played for the band Perry for many years, so I have not played that song in about a year and a half. But I will. You didn't ask for this quick story, but I will tell you that.
Say it.
When I wasn't touring with the Perrys yet, and they were opening for somebody else I was at a show, and I went out to the front of the house, and I was like, that was the only song I'd ever heard, and I said, I'm gonna watch this. This is gonna be terrible because I just didn't like that song, and I heard that. I went out and I watched it, and frankly, they Kimberly particularly was so dynamic. I looked at it, and I was like, that gig is gonna blow up. And you just watched it and you knew at that point that gig was going to blow up. So when they called like a month later and said, "Hey, we're making some changes in the band. Would you like to come out and see if it's a good fit?" I was immediately on board. So that song was the reason I sort of mocked it. And then every time I played it,
you thought the song was going to be bad.
Did you ever tell them that after?
Oh yeah. I told them that because it was that song. It was so much different than most of their stuff that. But it was a sort of what it is in country radio. Sometimes you put out kind of the fluffy single to lead to the If I Die Young was the next single for them, and that turned out to be one of the top 5 selling songs of all time in country music.
Again, Jason Fitz played the fiddle for the band Perry, and we're gonna get to know him in a little bit, and you're gonna get to know him. And it's an incredible background and life that he had before jumping into sports here. It's very, very cool. So we're going to have some fun with that for sure.
But first we need to get you caught up on everything going on in, sports. So a little bit of what's trending. Oh, good little.
Like that, huh?
The button push there.
See,
was
there
staggering.
you go. Yeah.
Kristaps Porzingis, the NBA leader in blocks, tore the ACL in his left knee after landing awkwardly on Giannis Antetokounmpo's foot after a dunk in the second quarter of a loss to Milwaukee.
I mean, I don't even know where to go. I know Stanzik is Mr. Knick fan over there is just, he's at a loss. Here was a team that, you finally set your direction. Carmelo Anthony's gone. Kristaps Porzingis is the 7'3" new player of the, this is the NBA now, that big guy that can shoot away from the basket, play away from the basket. He is there, and they're going to build around this guy. And now a large player with a lower body injury is just almost a death knell at times to come back from.
I think Stanzik and Knicks fans have to just sort of resign themselves to the fact that you're not supposed to be happy. There's not supposed to be good things that happen to you in life. You're not supposed to experience joy. You're not supposed to know what winning at a high level looks like in the NBA. You're just supposed to be miserable so that the rest of us can be entertained. That's all this proves. You wish the best for Kristaps, who is another victim of the LeBron James cursed all-star team and all of this, and you hope he can come back and continue to have his stellar career. But at this point, what other conclusion can you draw if you're a Knicks fan other than the fact that you're just not supposed to be happy?
You mentioned the curse, and Porzingis, DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Love, John Wall, all injured, 2 missing a full season, 2 missing 6 to 8 weeks. Substantial injuries, all on Team LeBron. So it's the modern Madden curse.
How about it? But boy, the Knicks, I mean, in all seriousness, man, I mean, that's at least a 10-month injury to get back, and then to get back to where you were again. I mean, where this team goes in their building, and now, put the brakes on before we get going again, but still you have to have the thought process of how we're going to be in the next 2 years to try and build on from this, all depending on how he is.
All going to cost also Porzingis some money because, in theory, next year's the last year of his deal. If he's not on the All-NBA team or Defensive Player of the Year, he can max out at 25% of the salary cap instead of 30%. So this injury and the timing of it's going to cost him some cash next year too. So worst case scenario for the Knicks all over the place. Do I hit the little button again?
Yeah,
I'm just asking as we go. Watch this.
There you go.
I'm on button
like
fire.
Pro.
The LA Lakers were fined $50,000 by the NBA for another violation of the league's anti-tampering rule after team president Magic Johnson recently praised Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I don't get it. Can you explain this one? What did he say about Antetokounmpo?
He said, quote, "I'm just happy he's starting in the All-Star game because he deserves that. And he's going to be like an MVP, a champion. This dude, he's going to put Milwaukee on the map. And I think he's going to bring them a championship one day."
Are we missing something? I mean, I know we got fined $500,000 for talking about Paul George and saying if I see him, I could say hi to him and that's about it or whatever. Are we missing something?
I think the problem is Magic has such a personality and platform. We want him to talk about NBA players, and we feel like it's the same as if Charles Barkley is talking about NBA players. But he is a front office guy. So I guess maybe it teeters the line of now Antetokounmpo knows that he's a fan, and maybe there's negotiation power from it. It's tough for me.
I'm stunned. To me, unless a basketball person can come on and explain to me the rationale for this, I think it's a joke. I think it's crazy.
And really, the Bucks look like snitches in all this, too, because they quoted Magic Johnson on their Instagram page and really highlighted his words in all this. So
was that double? They did it. They would be nice and saying, hey, be careful. Hey, league, look at what Magic is doing.
Yeah, no, look at all this nice promotion about our young player, but also, hey, Adam, dude over here looks like he's trying to move in on Bay.
I don't... Moving on, babe.
You can see it from across the room right now, right? He's got eyes for your woman.
But I really don't, I truly don't get it. I truly don't understand how even an executive praises another guy, doesn't mention, boy, I can't wait till he's a free agent or any kind of, about how he'd fit on our team, and you're fined $50,000. I don't get, I truly don't understand that one.
We'll try and get some understanding at 9:00. Bobby Marks is going to join us. We'll see what Bobby has to say about it. Maybe he can give us a little bit of a insight on it, our own NBA insider. We'll see what he thinks on it. And also, I'm on fire. The San Francisco Giants officially announced yesterday they will retire Barry Bonds number 25 and celebrate his career before their August 11th game against the Pirates at AT&T Park.
Gotta love the first 25 fans in attendance that night will get a number 25 cap in honor of Bonds, who obviously wore that number during his 15 years in San Francisco. Listen, I think the guy should be in the Hall of Fame, so I'm certainly not going to have any kind of issue with this at all. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think Roger Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame. As I said, if you want to put in something up in the Hall of Fame to talk about the era that it was in, I don't care. But these guys should be in the Hall of Fame, so this is an honor that I think he should get, and I'm glad the Giants are doing it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the fan reception, I think, around there because of what he meant to that franchise will be certainly warmer than maybe it has, because we continue to see this is about baseball purists pushing back against the continued turnover in the sport as younger fans do creep in, as younger voters creep in the Hall of Fame voting every year, who the steroid era players poll very highly with. So it's that constant tension between this, none of which I think will exist in this situation.
And again, it's not like the fans too, but the league moved on because Bonds was working in the league, working for teams. McGuire working in the league, so I mean they were working back in the league again. These are the writers, the voters, who are putting their stamp on this of their thought process, and I understand there are a bunch of people that agree with them. I certainly don't. So I think this is a great honor, and I'm glad the Giants are doing it.
100%. I don't think there's no easy way for baseball to just sort of erase an entire section of history that influenced an entire generation of fans. I mean, you can't just erase whatever the steroid era is, and because there's no clarity to exactly what that was and who was a part of it, who wasn't a part of it, there's no easy way to handle it. But you can't just pretend these guys didn't exist, especially if you're the Giants. Go for it all day, every day. Acknowledge your great player, acknowledge that moment, and let Giants fans celebrate it, in my mind. And we have more drama in New England. Malcolm Butler went to Instagram to tell everybody that what we're hearing is not true, that he was not part of any sort of inappropriate activities during Super Bowl week, but that he appreciates all that the Patriots have done for him. He went out basically saying, my name is clear.
Right.
What's key to that is that his Instagram post, this is so NBA Petty Wars, his Instagram post was liked by Tom Brady, which is seen as sort of a moment of support.
Well, and there was a comment too from Tom Brady that even said, nothing but love for you, Malcolm, great teammate, great friend, all these different things, outwardly praising him in a way that, to your point, is very NBA. We're used to that. It's par for the course. It is not very Patriot way, and that's what's jarring about this.
No, it's not. And one other current Patriot, even though it was on IR, Dante Hightower, showed support for Malcolm Butler as well. And you're right, that's usually a not very Patriot way here on Golic and Wingo. Jason Fitz in for Wingo. And what does this mean for the Patriots next season? Now What Wednesday is brought to you by Jared, the Gallery of Jewelry, turning feelings into jewelry. That's why he went to Jared. Listen, you read that whole thing from Malcolm Butler because we were all wondering, and all that was out there, did he miss curfew? Where was he hanging out? What was he doing? He spelled it out in there. I did none of that, nothing. And he said, it's actually hurtful to me and my family that would be talked about. He said, I saw my family every night. I did nothing else. You start to hear report, and he self-admittedly did not have a great year playing. And then now the other things you're hearing is the captains knew that he was going to be less a part of this defense in this game, supposedly. And then you heard reports he wasn't picking things up of this Eagle offense, which I have a tough time buying because this guy played 98% of the snaps. He's seen everything out there. So there's part of the report that I just kind of scoff at. But if he wasn't playing well and people knew because Rowe, who started for him, was bigger and these are bigger receivers, that he was going to be less a part of this defense, I could see that a bit. But man, not playing a snap on the defensive side of the ball really makes you kind of think, boy, is there more to this thing? Maybe there isn't more to this thing. Maybe it is the fact that he just didn't have a great year and they didn't think he would be very good on this in this defense against his team. That's still a tough one for me to swallow, though.
If his Instagram post was very well written, but it wasn't clear enough on what he did do, that would be the one thing I would say. He came out and said, none of what you're hearing is true. But he never acknowledges what was the reason then. In his mind, there must be a reason he was benched. And I don't know isn't good enough. There's a point where you've got to know at this point, hey, they benched me because I didn't practice well. They benched me because I wasn't playing well. He doesn't say any of that. He leaves that just vague enough that we don't know where it's going. Now, the other side of it, though, to Mike's point, is that Patriot Way, whatever the Patriot Way is, Tom Brady seems to be completely out on it now. I mean, he's got his own Facebook show. He's doing his own like docu-series. He's out commenting on this. Like, I don't know that you can rebottle up whatever Patriot way is. I think that's the most staggering part of what we're seeing in New England right now is that it's not just it feels like there's chaos. It feels like whatever we expect from New England no longer exists. I don't know that that can be rebottled.
Well, it's the kind of instability that breeds a situation like what we've seen with Josh McDaniels now. If you continue to weigh all of the little parts of this that add up into why Josh McDaniels would stay in New England versus want to go to Indianapolis, I think you have to factor part of this in there that we've seen a shift in the power dynamic in New England that would not only say, hey, Josh, we want you to stick around because we think you can be the next guy, which is interesting enough that they're planning on that level, which shows you where more of the importance is because you had the chance to do that with a quarterback in your franchise, and you chose not to because you valued that one quarterback over everyone else, signaling to us and signaling to Seth Wickersham that there appeared to be a change in this power dynamic. Now you're saying, hey, we want this coordinator so bad, we're going to rip him away at the midnight hour from this deal he was ready to sign because we would like to, in theory, have him as the succession plan if you buy into that model of thinking for our head coach. All of that indicates to Bill Belichick that maybe I don't have the power I once did, and this Instagram post and these constant little reminders that the power and the stranglehold you thought you had on this organization are gone, all kind of feed into that mindset.
This used to be, or always seemed to be, a team that when darts were thrown their way, they all hunkered in together and say, this is the Bill Belichick way, and we're together, and nothing gets out of this locker room, to now, with the power struggle that Seth Wickersham had brought up, to the Instagram, we're seeing Brady come out and back his teammate off of a decision that Bill Belichick made. I mean, it really, you start to think and go, wow, is for the first time, are we seeing on the outside? Now, there's always stuff on the inside, no matter how successful you are. I heard somebody talking about it yesterday saying, I guarantee you there's players playing on the team that can't stand being there. They can't stand the situation. And that's absolutely right.
Oh,
I mean, that's
yeah.
true everywhere.
You
right?
talk to guys that have been there, and it's a culture of silence that existed for a long time because of fear, not because always guys were more than happy to comply with this, because you knew that Bill Belichick could flex in situations like this, that if you didn't comply with what the organization wanted, they would just cut you, let alone not play you.
Right.
But it feels like we're in the middle of an uprising. That's the difference. It feels like there's some sort of a swell, and for the first time ever, the Patriots and Belichick can't just put a cap on all of it. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, and it's rivalry week in college basketball. We have Duke UNC on ESPN tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. North Carolina head coach Roy Williams will join us in 15 minutes. But now it's time for Try Jason.
We're going to try Jason. We're going to get to know Jason a little bit. The staff has compiled questions, and our man Jerry voiced them. So let's you got him there.
They're trusting me with a lot of buttons. I don't know.
They really are. So let's try Jason.
What musicians did you look up to as a child that led you to pursue music as a career?
That was spectacularly done. Okay, so my first ever concert was Bon Jovi Skid Row. And I remember at the time I was a classical musician, and I went to this concert. I was like 10, 11 years old, and it was in Maine. And Bon Jovi came out, and I found out later they're called toasters. They're things under the stage that pop you up and you land. And Richie Sambora landed on the edge of the stage like he looked like he'd flown, smoke going everywhere, trench coat, playing the opening song of the show. And I looked out and I said, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So Richie Sambora was like a life-changing guy for me because that was the moment that I realized that classical music was not fun and that that touring looked like it would be. So Richie gets and then a few years ago, I was taking a red eye from in LAX, and I was just being a grouchy, and the security lines were all messed up. I hadn't slept in 2 days, and I throw my stuff down, and I'm all angry, throw it down in airport security, and I realized I hit the edge of somebody's back, so I turn around to like say I'm sorry. Richie Sambora standing next to me.
Really?
I stopped him in the middle of LAX, and we talked for like 10, 15 minutes. The nicest guy. Then we tweeted back and forth for a little while. That was like the
That's
ultimate.
Cool story.
Yeah. So
did you tell him that story?
Yeah. I told him. I told Richie the whole reason I ever toured as a musician was because of Richie Sambora.
All right, good start. Like that.
All right, that's good. We're going to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're moving along.
All right, here we go.
What was the worst part of watching the Super Bowl at the Golics?
Oh, sitting next to Golic Jr., obviously. I mean, sitting next to Golic Jr., like, no, actually, the worst part was the coma after the cake.
Yeah.
Like my God. There was that cake. What was that cake?
My wife, My wife made this cake that was just ungodly sugar-filled. With Oreo cookies and frosting and
a diabetes garnish.
Yeah, it was, but it was so good.
Oh, but you watched.
It dropped everybody.
If you watch the replay on it, Golick Jr. was sitting upright in his chair after the cake. Every time it shot back to him, he was further and further slid down. He was in straight nap time.
I thought the best line of the night, I didn't know if you would get aggravated by it again, because you're a classical music guy, was when Mike Periano, the Perianos, our friends, were there, and Mike Periano asked you, hey, with your fiddle, did you play a lot of square dances?
He did ask me if I did a lot of square dances.
Talk about getting typecast.
Yeah. And I tried to play it off a few times where I was like, no. And he's like, well, I just know country music. Country. It just kept drilling on the square dancing. So then I finally did. I think
this next question will let us know you did a little bit more than that.
Do you have any stories from Juilliard reminiscent of the movie Whiplash? And in your time there, were you more often Russian or dragging?
Wow. So when you're a classical violinist, you always play ahead of the beat. So I was always Russian to the Russian or dragon joke. Yes, the movie Whiplash, very accurate. I remember I had one teacher at Juilliard when I was a kid, Peter Malevsky, and spoke a bunch of, he just spoke mostly Russian when he got really frustrated with you, and he would just pick up whatever was on his desk and throw it if he got angry. So
really?
Like snow globes come hurling across. And when I was a little kid, and I started there, because I started at Juilliard when I was 10, when I was a little kid, the doors are very, very, very heavy at the school, so I couldn't get them open. I'm not a big guy now. I was particularly not strong then. Couldn't get the doors open. So he would always have to come out and help push the door open for me, and then he would mumble in very disapproving Russian the entire time.
You were 10
yes.
when you were Juilliard?
Yeah.
Classical violin?
Yeah, when I started there, yeah. I was,
what were you doing at 10, Mike?
Classically eating?
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at where it's gotten you. Yeah. I mean, look at where it's gotten you.
Part of the job for a while, very short while.
Unbelievable. Wow, that's good.
Sort of the running joke when people are like, how do you get to ESPN? I'm like, you just go to Juilliard and see what happens.
Who is the biggest star you got to meet during your time as a musician?
Tough question, because for me it was Richie Sambora, right? I said that earlier, but we had the opportunity. I think the luckiest part for the band is that If I Die Young crossed over, so we were able to do all of the Billboard Awards and American Music Awards and all those guys. And so I've got a buddy that's a drummer for Bruno, so I've been able to meet him. And I actually went to high school with one of the guys in NSYNC, so I sort of grew up going to NSYNC. Before I'd ever achieved any level of success, I went to a bunch of NSYNC shows.
So tell us which one.
JC.
Really?
Yeah. Shout out to JC, by the way. He's a big ESPN fan. So
there you go.
He might be watching. He might be watching.
Call in.
Yeah.
I like that.
Call in. Also a big NBA fan. So I guess, depending on who you – but I will never forget Nicki Minaj at a Grammy show was running – and it was live TV, and she was running late getting to the side of the stage, and they were doing makeup on her, and I was standing there, and they kept yelling. They're like, Nicki, we got to go. We're live. Nicki looked over and said, live TV will wait for Nicki Minaj. That's my
Nicki.
That is great.
She's not wrong.
Let's do another one.
What's the coolest instrument to play in a band? What's the least cool instrument? And where does your fiddle rank? Hit him with the fiddle, boy.
Fiddle ranks very near the bottom. I mean, very near the bottom. Coolest to me is the drummer. And the funny thing is, that's always when I walk around and people say, oh, are you the drummer? That's when I feel like I've really made it. So the drummer, by far the coolest. Least cool has got to be the banjo, right? Banjo is not,
really?
Banjo's not cool.
Really?
Banjo. And most, to me, most of your guys that you see on country tours that are playing banjo are actually playing what's called a ganjo. So it's a guitar. It's strung just like an acoustic guitar. It's just made to sound like a banjo. So they're not even really playing the banjo. They're playing the ganjo.
So are they the ones that you look at in judgment the way Dad or I would have looked at specialists back in the day? The kickers and punters that are over on their separate field just being weirdos, not doing any real football?
Who is that in the band?
Probably the fiddle player usually. We're kind of the punters of country music. Yeah, really? I'm not going to deny that.
Real quick, we got a lot of questions. We'll get to them. What's the hardest instrument to play?
Violin, by far. There's no help on a violin. This much is the difference between, for radio, yeah. A centimeter is the difference between accurate and not accurate on a violin. That's why.
Because you said there's no frets.
Right, no frets. So I was practicing 8 hours a day by the time I was 8 years old.
That's unbelievable.
You have to.
And I don't want to say any of it's easy because you got to put time into it, but relative to how we're answering this easiest instrument.
Acoustic guitar. Like, think about every songwriter you ever see out of Nashville has got an acoustic guitar in their hand because they learn like 4 chords and they can play acoustic. And acoustic guitars have what's called a capo, so you just move this little stick basically up and down the neck and it changes the key for you. So you don't even have to be able to play, like, if you learn 4 chords, you can just move the little stick and play those. You can now play all the chords by using the same hand position.
Oh, man, we are getting the dirt here on
so
people.
many cheats.
Man, I tell you, you've all been found out right now, all right? The next time some guy pulls out a guitar at a party and plays Wonderwall, know he's a fraud.
So you ain't cool.
Total fraud.
So you ain't that cool.
You could do that and give it an hour on YouTube and you can figure it out.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
Before we get to this next guest, he's been, I don't want to say stalking, let's just say aggressively leaving messages for us. Let's hear this one.
Hey guys, doing a mobile phone, first time, long time, great show. I know we're trying to get to know Fitz this morning, so I got a question for him. Abdullah, congratulations on being the only guy who still thinks that LeBron James is staying in Cleveland after the season. I'll hang up and listen, thanks.
Shut up, Stu. I'm hanging on to the LeBron thing. And listen, I had been saying forever, why would he leave? His best chance to get to the finals and win it, and the only way to win a championship is to be in the finals, was to stay in Cleveland. So he's not leaving Cleveland. Why would he leave Cleveland now? Man, I could pick 10 other teams that he should go to instead of staying on Cleveland. I was hanging on that forever, and now I'm hanging on to it more with my heart than my head. But boy, you want to talk about a ship that is sailing.
Well, let's get the man on to talk. That's an aggressive approach to come at. He's coming at you, Mike.
Yeah, yes, that's how he rolls. He's very bummed that he wasn't in our house for the Super Bowl, I think. So he's really taking it out on me.
I am outraged. First off, your reaction to that was priceless, but I am so jealous and outraged that I was not invited to the Golic family Super Bowl party. I mean, am I a family member or not? And how did Jason Fitz get into this family?
Look, I'm going to start here.
Go ahead,
Stu Gratz. The first thing you got to know, buddy, is that the chairs were unbelievably comfortable. The food was fantastic. The drinks, there was even drinks. Like we brought nothing. We brought nothing. And in fact, I'm pretty sure the Golics are like, hey, if you want to bring some buddies, you can. So, it was a mostly open invite to the party. So, do with that as you will.
Okay, thanks. Well, I mean, just keep drive the knife in a little bit further. Just go ahead.
Oh, I love how he's pronouncing your name, since you would mispronounce his name as well a few times. As I said after the message, Stu, listen, he brings Juilliard at 10 years old to the table. He brings touring in a band, for years to the table. What are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing to the Golic family?
Hot takes. That's all I have. That's my gift. I mean, that's all I can bring, Golic. That is all, that my charm, Golic, because listen, I know your wife. I've gotten to know your wife pretty well. I think your wife likes me a lot. I really do. So I got hot takes and charm, and that's all I got. That's it.
I'm going to tell you what, my wife loves you. There is no doubt about that. So right out of the gate, give us your hottest take going on right now.
Listen, I'll give you a great take on the Hall of Fame. I think it's a great take on the Hall of Fame because I was railing about this yesterday, and Golic, I'd be interested to get your thoughts. I don't think Brian Urlacher, with all due respect to Brian Urlacher, is a first ballot Hall of Fame. Mike, when I think of first ballot Hall of Fame, I think of the elite of the elite. And when I think of elite linebackers, I never, ever, for 1 second, do I think of Brian Urlacher. I think of Lawrence Taylor. I think of Dick Butkus. I think of Mike Singletary. I do not think of Brian Urlacher. Someone needs to explain to me how Brian Urlacher is a first ballot Hall of Famer and Terrell Owens is not. Because for me, Mike, it doesn't make any sense. Brian Urlacher is a Hall of Famer. He is not the elite of the elite. He's not even a top 5 linebacker in Bears history. How about that?
Wow, I'd need to hear the other 5 linebackers you're talking about in Bears history to say he's not 5 in Bears history. And the reason he isn't T.O., we know why T.O. wasn't a first time. T.O. should have been. But if T.O. had a reputation of being a fine teammate and no issue in the locker room, I think he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer like Randy Moss was, or and then Ray Lewis. So you would have him.
Mike, hold on a second. Mike, hold on a second, because Randy Moss had some of that same stuff. He did. He quit on the Raiders. He quit a lot on his teams. Like, he had some of that same stuff, and he gets in first ballot. Terrell Owens does not. Doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with you, and I think that, and I've chastised the writers time and time again for their morality that they think they're upholding by keeping T.O. out. I think it was an absolute joke. I'll be surprised. I thought only Ray Lewis and T.O. would get in. I thought Urlacher and Ray Lewis and Moss would get in. I thought T.O. would still be waiting, and I thought Urlacher would have to wait one more time. I don't mind him going in on the first ballot. I think it was going to be first or second ballot with him. I'm surprised, Jason. I'm surprised that 2 linebackers and 2 wide receivers went in the way they did.
I'm surprised by that too. And actually, Stu, I agree with you. I think there were some questions. I understand this is not a popular opinion, but I think there were some questions about Randy Moss's effort that should have affected his Hall of Fame. And when you just walk off the field early, if we're gonna fault T.O. for who he was as a teammate on the sidelines, when you just walk off the field, like that's got to mean something when we talk about Hall of Fame. I will say, Urlacher, all-decade team for the 2000s, 41 and a half sacks, 22 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 90 passes defended. I mean, the stats are pretty staggering for Urlacher. I would ask you this, Stu, if you were looking at it saying who didn't get in that should have had Urlacher's spot, because that's a tougher. I didn't feel like anybody was left out that should have gotten in.
Yeah, you know, but I did. So that's probably more of the problem. It's a great question. That's more of the problem for me with Urlacher getting in, because Urlacher getting in means someone doesn't get in. So I don't think Urlacher should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think Tony Baselli, who's a friend of our show, and Mike, I know you're fond of him as well. I think Tony Baselli, who was also, by the way, on an all-decade team in the 90s, and for a 6 or 7 year span, was the best tackle in the NFL, and I'm not even certain it was close. Tony Baselli should already be in the Hall of Fame, and every time we put a guy like Brian Urlacher, who's deserving, he gets in on the first ballot, and that means Tony Baselli doesn't get in this year, and he's got to wait around a couple of more years. I think that's unfair. Baselli deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree with that on Baselli, and no O-linemen were taken. If you'd separate Jerry Kramer, obviously, in, but that was a Veterans Committee as far as getting voted in by the voters. Between him, Steve Hutchinson, Alan Faneca, no offensive linemen, and Joe Jacoby, nobody making it in this time around. So I'm with you on Baselli. I think he should be in for, even though it was a shorter career, we've seen guys with shorter careers get in, and hopefully he will get in because he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Stu, the latest, biggest news out there that everybody expected Josh McDaniels to be introduced today as an Indianapolis Colts head coach. He backs out of that. He already hired a couple of coaches who are now going to stay on no matter who the new head coach is with the Colts. He goes back to the Patriots, who say Robert Kraft sweetened the deal for him. What do you think, in the Stugat's head of conspiracy theories possibly, what do you think is the reason Josh McDaniels is not the coach of the Colts?
Mike, I hate to disappoint you. I think I'll be reasonable here. I think I'm going to try to be reasonable here. I'm sorry. But I think he sat down and thought about it. He's got 4 kids. He didn't want to uproot his entire family and move to Indianapolis. There were questions about Andrew Luck's shoulder. There were questions about that entire team. And he's sitting there with Bill Belichick, and he still has Tom Brady, who's playing at a very high level, was the NFL MVP. So, I mean, and had a great Super Bowl. I mean, Tom Brady really did outplay Nick Foles when you think about it in that Super Bowl. I think at least they played to a push. So I think McDaniel stayed, in a place, in an area of the country where he's comfortable, where his family can stay, where his kids can continue to grow up. And then I think there had to be some sort of arrangement. Like, I'm certain there was more money, but there has to be some sort of arrangement here where Josh McDaniels is going to be the head coach once Bill Belichick steps down. I had to think that was part of the discussion, because for McDaniels, it was always about the future being murky with the Patriots. What's going to happen once this guy leaves? And I think Bob Kraft settled that by saying, hey, when he leaves, it is your job. Plus, I'm going to give him more money to stay right now. I think that has to be the reason, right?
It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. I'm Jason Fitz, in for Trey. We're talking to Stu Gratz from the Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gratz. And so, Stu, let me ask you then, how hireable is Josh McDaniels to any other job at this point?
Well, that's a great question. You know what?
Thank you.
If the right job becomes available, I don't know. Does he take it? Does he not? Because remember, Bill Belichick, it's funny because we just had the 30 for 30 out where Bill Belichick and Parcells had the same arrangement. When Parcells left, Belichick would take over, and then Parcells left and Belichick didn't want to take over because I don't think he wanted to kind of be the guy that followed the guy. So it's going to be interesting. I think Josh McDaniels, if he puts it out there that he wants a job, I think he'll get offers every offseason. But it's going to be interesting to see. If Josh McDaniels doesn't go after any head coaching jobs next offseason, the following offseason, then we know he has some sort of arrangement with Bill Belichick and the Patriots and the Crafts to be the next head coach of the Patriots.
Right. Agree with that. Stu, what are you and Dan and the crew out there, what have been your thoughts about Malcolm Butler being benched for the Super Bowl and only playing the one lone punt play?
We can't figure it out. I mean, just for the life of me, cannot figure it out. And it's just weird that Bill Belichick, when you make a decision, I get the Patriot way, I get all of it. It was interesting. I heard you guys on the way in with Tom Brady. And I think the Patriot way is kind of fractured. I really do. I think the players are getting tired of it because, you got Brady with the Facebook stuff and Brady commenting on Malcolm Butler. It's interesting. I think maybe guys are starting to tire, especially Brady, of the Patriot way and what Bill Belichick asked you to do by being quiet. But I can't figure this one out. When you make a decision this big, in the biggest game of the year, in the Super Bowl, and we find out about it right before the game, I mean, guys, you got to give us something if you're Bill Belichick. You got to give us something. And what he's given us is simply not the truth. I happen to believe Malcolm Butler here. I don't think he was late to anything. I just think the Patriots decided to bench him for whatever reason. But I'd like to know what that reason is. It's hard to form an opinion on it until Bill Belichick tells you the reason that Malcolm Butler did not play in that Super Bowl.
In fairness, Stu, though, if we live in a world where even Belichick can't get benefit of the doubt, can any coach? I mean, can any coach at this point?
No, well, Belichick can't get it to no. I mean, you're right. No one gets the benefit of the doubt. But don't you want to know why he didn't play? I mean, aren't you interested in that decision and why Malcolm Butler, who's on the field for 90% of the snaps and their best cornerback, he's not great, but he's the best they got, why he's not on that field?
Of course I want to know, but I feel like we turned immediately as he owes us answers sort of a vibe because that's what we're used to. But my God, I mean, if I'm Bill Belichick, I'm standing at the podium today saying, guess what, boys? I don't owe you anything. I'm Bill Belichick.
Right. Is it, I don't know you anything, or what I told you is the truth? Is it back down to the term that we had to figure out the meaning of Occam's razor, that it just was the simplest explanation that Bill Belichick said? We put the players on the field that thought would give us the best chance to win. It was a bigger cornerback, and that's it. I don't know, but I'm with you, Stu. At some point, maybe we'll find out if there was more, what it would be. And all right, Stu, listen, I've been trying to hang on to the Cavaliers for so long. So long that they could flip the switch, that they could, get it going when the playoffs go, that LeBron would stay there. I'm white knuckling, hanging on to that one. So let's go this route. In your opinion, and I know other things have to play out, what team do you realistically think LeBron James would go to?
Wow, that's I don't think it's the Lakers, man. I
don't
thought
either.
At one point, maybe it was the Lakers, and I thought at one point maybe it was the Knicks, but Porzingis and that injury, because maybe he wanted to stay in the East. I can't see him going to the Celtics. I guess, you know what? I guess the Rockets make the most sense, Mike. They really do. Chris Paul is one of his best friends, maybe his best friend, in the NBA, with James Harden there. I think, you put LeBron with James Harden and Chris Paul in that offensive system with Mike D'Antoni. You got to think that at the very least they have the best shot of anyone in the NBA. They do right now without LeBron. The Houston Rockets do, beating the Golden State Warriors. With LeBron, I think they'd probably be a slight favorite to beat the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. So I guess I could see him going there, going to play with Chris Paul and James Harden. I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be fun for the league. Unfortunately, they'll have to meet up in the Western Conference Finals because the NBA hasn't figured out just to seed these things 1 through 16 and let the two best teams play.
I mean, my God, if he goes to the Rockets, can we just cancel the next regular season and just let those two teams play about once a month and just let it happen?
Just play 82 games. That's it.
The East will be the minor league. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Right.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Stu, we appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Really, Stu, you're really part of the family. As much as it doesn't seem like it, you really are.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that today, Mike. I got to be honest with you. I'm a little down on you right now.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. You guys have all of the fiddle music.
Yeah, we do.
Just dial in here.
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. There's huge breaking news, obviously, over the last 24 hours in the NFL, and we get to talk to one of the best about it. Pro Football Hall of Famer Bill Polian joins us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts.
Real quick, though, do you know that this guy, Jason Fitz, Bill, was at Juilliard at 10 years old? playing violin?
I did not know that.
Yes. How impressive is that?
What's he doing here with us?
That's exactly right, huh?
Have you seen the music business? Yeah. I mean, this is stable compared to the music business.
Symphony Hall, man.
Isn't that amazing? But before we get to the Josh McDaniels thing, because it's amazing, just a quick note on the Hall of Fame. I know you and I differ on Terrell Owens, him getting in. Were you surprised about Randy Moss? Because there was issues about Randy Moss that he got in on the first ballot, and did you think it would take a couple for him or no?
No, and I've long since the debacle with Commissioner Tagliabue a year ago, I have long since even stopped giving it a thought. You never know what those people are going to do in the room.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
You really, really don't. What did you think of the class? So I didn't know Urlacher would get in. 2 linebackers and 2 wide receivers was kind of stunning, and no offensive linemen.
It is, and the fact that John Lynch didn't make it was a little stunning to me. I think he's clearly a Hall of Famer. But, who knows?
It is. I'm with you. The whole Hall of Fame voting thing can be a bit of a mess.
Well, let's say on that for 1 second. If the process is broken, is there a way to fix it in your mind?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily broken. As the Hall approaches as the league approaches its 100th anniversary, probably a good idea to take a look at the process and see if there's in this day and age there's a better way to do it. I don't think that it's broken, but there might be a little bit tweaks that can happen to make it a little bit better. Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. So, all right, the situation going on now. Let's start from the Colts side, a team you certainly know well. So they think they're signing Josh McDaniels. They think they're going to have the presser, and then he decides not to do it. Just from the Colts side of it, tell us how this messes them up, doesn't mess them up, how now they have 2 coaches that are under contract that I believe have to be there with the next coach. How do they all work through all this stuff?
Well, they're going to work through it fine. I got off the plane at 10 o'clock last night and looked at my phone, and it had blown up.
I bet.
So, and it was all really, people from the Colts family calling one another, going back to my days there. What the heck happened?
Yeah.
So we quickly found out what had happened, that McDaniels had backed out, and they're fine with it. I talked to people in the organization; they're fine with it. They're moving on. They have a short list of people they're going to talk to. They'll get a coach. They're going to absolutely honor the contracts of the coaches that McDaniel wanted them to hire, and they did. So they'll honor those contracts, and those players, those guys will be with them. So they'll just move on. It's as simple as that. No one's upset. No one's crying about spilled milk. As one person said to me, who I highly respect, former teammate, better to learn it now than later.
Is this, just one quick one, Jason, is this something that the league can change by letting the Colts announce he's going to be their coach before the Super Bowl? Because obviously the longer a team plays, the tougher it is to talk to that coach who sets it up. So if 2 weeks ago they could have agreed to it and announced it and Josh McDaniels knew he was going to be the coach, is that something they can do?
Well, they could change the rule. I don't think the rule needs changing. I mean, this is all about Josh McDaniels. It's not about the Colts. It's not about the rule. He decided not to take a job that he basically had told him he was going to take. They had actually scheduled a press conference. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So there's no rule that can stop that. And I think on balance, the rule is a good rule. The idea is you don't want to distract the people who are involved in the Super Bowl or involved in the playoffs with another job. And at least in the sense that they compartmentalize, it's a good thing. So I think that rule should stay in place.
Pro Football Hall of Famer Bill Polian joining us on Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN2. So, Bill, for the rest of the owners in the NFL, if you're looking at Josh McDaniels in the future for a head coaching job, does this give you some hesitance?
Absolutely. I think, the Denver thing was a consideration, quite frankly, as you go through it, as you go through the hiring process, as people talk to one another. He did not have success in Denver.
Right.
So, and it ended very badly. Now, from his perspective, there are reasons why that happened, and I think the Colts people listened to it and actually believed it. But this now is a second issue that you have to get through. So, at some point, somebody's going to hire him, maybe in New England, maybe elsewhere. But it's certainly another hurdle that he's going to have to cross and explain.
So then we get to the New England side, and from your time in front offices, can you even begin to think of what were some of the reasons that we're all hearing, the successor to Bill, up the salary, and or said that in the successor to Bill, family considerations, a wife and 4 kids, I mean, what have you seen in the past that would lead you to think it could be one thing or another?
Well, it's always a combination of things. I mean, clearly they had meetings in Foxborough. That's been pretty well documented. And what was said in those meetings, no one knows.
Right.
And no one will know until it's time for Bill to walk away. And I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. In fact, I'd be more shocked about that than I am about this. So, we'll never know until the time comes. McDaniel probably won't enunciate his reasons. He probably shouldn't. It's his decision. It's one that he made. He has to live with it, and that's that.
Have you seen in your time in the league that just one of the thoughts is that, hey, not only will we sweeten your money, but you're next in line whenever Bill is done? Have you seen that in the league that this has been said?
I did it with Jim Caldwell, without question. Yeah, I mean, people do it that way because they want an orderly succession. General managers, George Young told me this when I took the job in Buffalo, when I got the job in Buffalo. I didn't have a choice. I was grateful that they didn't throw me out the door. He said, keep a list in your upper left-hand drawer of potential head coaches because you never know when something untoward is going to happen. Well, lo and behold, it happened in Buffalo. Marv Levy got prostate cancer and was out for a while. We had already appointed the late Elijah Pitts, God rest his soul, as the assistant head coach, and he took over seamlessly. And then when we recognized that Jim Caldwell was going to be a worthy successor to Tony Dungy, we simply named him assistant head coach with the idea that he would succeed Tony. And then, lo and behold, Tony had the tragedy in his family and ended his coaching career, earlier, I think, than he expected to for obvious and good personal reasons.
Yeah.
But I've done it twice, so I'm not a stranger to the process. That's for sure.
Can the Patriots name Josh McDaniels as a successor in a Rooney Rule era where they would have to interview a minority candidate?
Yes, there is an exception to the Rooney Rule that if a successor is named, that you can do that.
Huh.
Interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't
see.
Did not
know
Look at that. Bill Pullian dropping knowledge as always.
That's why he's in the Hall of Fame and we're not. The Malcolm Butler situation, from on the field situation, when this all played out, before just not giving our opinion, what did you think?
I was a bit surprised because I thought that Butler, on balance, while he hadn't played tremendously well, was a better cover guy than Rowe. Now, Rowe acquitted himself pretty well in the ball game, actually. But it brings Batamosi into play, who's not a great. The covering is not his thing against a team that clearly threw the ball very well. So I was a bit surprised. What occurred, I guess we'll never know. It's unfair, I think, to Malcolm in the sense that he's becoming a free agent for this to be out there without a sufficient explanation. But I guess it is what it is, and he'll have to make his case to whoever it is that wants to sign him. I'm certain he'll get a job. The question is at what price?
How much, right?
Let's look at the other side of that Super Bowl matchup. If you're Howie Roseman in Philly right now, how do you handle the quarterback situation next year that they now have?
Well, they have Nick under contract. They have Carson coming back, and they make no bones about the fact that Carson's the future of the franchise, and that's absolutely right. He's a transcendental quarterback. He's once in a generation. So that's the situation. Now, until Carson proves this is not Howie talking. This is me now. Although Howie and I are friends, until Carson proves that he's back 100%, I wouldn't do anything with Nick, and they're not forced to do anything with Nick because he's under contract and probably in a pretty good place. I mean, he's said on numerous occasions he likes it there. That's why he came back. He likes the coaching staff, etc. So you would think that it would be status quo. Now, if you want to sit around and dream up wild and crazy scenarios, I think probably for the next 4 weeks or maybe even 4 months we can do that.
Right.
and Howie would be remiss if he didn't look at it himself. When I was with the Colts, we would always, going into free agency, have a meeting where we said, think about all of the wild and crazy scenarios that could develop so we're prepared in case one does. And often it would. The craziest scenario that you could dream up came true. So witness Josh McDaniels, the press conference is called, right? And he backs out. So in the NFL, as Bill Parcells used to say, 5 things happen every day that you didn't anticipate. So as a GM, you try to anticipate them as best you can. So there'll be wild and crazy scenarios out there, and who knows how he'll be prepared. That much I can tell you.
When the phone, so now this is you talking now, Howie, you're putting the GM cap back on. When the phone rings there, if it rings there in Philadelphia with a team wanting Nick Foles, what would Bill Polian's price tag be that says, you know what, I can't turn that down?
High.
Yeah.
High.
What's high?
High is what RG3, et cetera, went for. You know, multiple ones and probably multiple twos.
Really?
Yes.
Is there?
He's a Super Bowl MVP, for goodness sake.
Any chance they'll get that offer?
I kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
I kind of doubt it because Nick will be a free agent in a year, and people who are looking at a long-term deal will say, we'd rather wait than give up that currency.
No, that makes sense.
Fantastic stuff. Pro Football Hall of Famer Bill Polian. We always appreciate your time.
Thanks Bill. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.